Today, we'll be reviewing a podcast called Pantsuit Politics. This is a suggestion that came in from Heath. Bryan and I have both listened to the show separately. We have not discussed it with each other beforehand. Let's get into it. This is a show hosted by two women, Sarah Stewart Holland and Beth Silvers. And these two women talk about politics and news articles they read and news stories that they've seen, and they're not happy about anything. They seem extremely depressed. I'm a little bit worried for their psyche and their mental well-being. Do you have a clip, Bryan, you think sums up the show that you want to get going with here?
The one that sums up the show for me was, let me see. Oh, wow. I have sheets here, Carl.
You got notes?
Yeah, so it would be clip 19.
Okay.
My big conclusion is that none of us have the education that we need about our country.
Yet.
I actually have the same clip, a little bit longer, because she explains that this whole living through 2020, which, as we all can agree, has not been a lot of fun. This is what she's learned from all of these experiences.
As I've thought more about what I've learned this year, from the pandemic, from the election, from the racial reckoning, my big conclusion is that none of us have the education that we need about our country, historically, civically, legally, geographically, to have the best answer to any particular question.
Her conclusion is that nobody can fix our problems. I think
nobody
that's amazing.
can fix our problems, and yet she wants to talk about it.
Well, they have a lot of answers, and we'll get into that. But I love that through all of this, what she's learned is that it's hopeless. And guess what I learned this year? It's hopeless, and we should all just give up, pack up, and go home. So that's great. Great advice.
And that is a thread that runs throughout the show, for sure.
Yes, hopelessness is the common theme that goes on. So let's talk about the thing that infuriated me the most, and that is the cadence with which this one woman speaks. I believe this is Sarah. Bryan, I happen to see some of your notes. You figured out which one was which that was impressive. I couldn't tell. But I think this is Sarah. Correct me if I'm wrong. Listen to how she speaks. There's so many pregnant pauses in the middle of sentences. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Because of overrun floors, understaffed facilities, then it doesn't matter.
That's just a quick example. Here's another one, same type of thing.
And I think that's what's so difficult.
Just spit it out! Why is it taking so long to get to these words? And I want to point out, before you think that we're just punching down, that these women are very successful podcasters. This is a show with a lot of support. Did you see how many Patreon supporters they had, Bryan?
They had 25 Patreon supporters, and if I counted correctly, 8 spots in a 1-hour show.
Yes, there were 8 spots, 2,400 Patreon supporters.
2,400.
2,400 Patreon supporters. And they explain, I went to their page and I watched the video that they have that promotes their Patreon. They explain why they need this support.
We know that finding a better way to talk politics requires more than just our bi-weekly podcast.
So we're taking Pantsuit Politics on the road, spending time in schools, community organizations, and businesses to share what we know about how to walk in each other's directions. Your Patreon support enables us to make this time commitment, do research worthy of your listening time, and grow our team.
Wow. So we need to support them so that they can take this show on the road. They got to go to schools and businesses. No, that's the whole point of a podcast. It goes everywhere. You don't have to take it on the road. That's why podcasts exist.
When I was in 8th grade, the Salvation Army came into our school, and they had a band, and they were playing Van Halen, which in 8th grade was awesome.
Sweet.
And they played one song, and just as he's about to get to the solo, he just moves on because this guy ain't no Eddie Van Halen. I can't express how disappointed I was in the moment. These ladies showing up to my school to preach this woke shit to me that they don't even believe, evidently.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that, because these women are very left-leaning, which I think will become as no surprise to anybody. They talk a lot about the Electoral College and all of the issues with that. And I thought the hypocrisy of this was pretty fun to point out. The Electoral College is an impediment to our democracy, according to these women.
The value that they either believe drives our electoral system or believe should drive our electoral system is one person, one vote. And the Electoral College is the biggest impediment to that.
Okay, so we've heard this discussion before. We can have this type of debate. But then the woman says this.
You know, when the polling for Joe Biden and the Democratic Party was looking so positive, particularly in Texas, my husband and I had this conversation, and I said, man, maybe we shouldn't waste any political capital on the Electoral College if we turn Texas blue.
Oh, so if Texas votes for Democrats, then all of a sudden we like the Electoral College. It's funny how that works out, isn't it? Well, if we could just win every single presidential election, then this system's great. I don't have a problem with it at all. Don't be so open about your dishonesty, I guess would be my point.
And it's not enough to just tell their friends. They have to go into a podcast and let everyone else know. Because that was in one of my notes too, that like they have this, we're all in it together, like facade. But the more they talk, the more you realize it's like all they care about is themselves and their stupid kids.
Yes. And the COVID discussion, this show starts off with a lot of fun.
We are facing the most frightening, horrific numbers as far as this current surge. I don't know if surge is the right word for it anymore.
We're all gonna die!
The first 20 minutes of this podcast was them explaining how we're all going to die and there's nothing that we can do about it. Which, I don't know how you feel about COVID, Brian. I think that maybe we're overdoing it a little bit, especially when they talk about things like this.
There is a better chance of surviving this now than there was in March because of all of the learning in the medical community. And that's amazing. And shout out to the medical community.
There's a better chance of surviving this now. Yes, there's a 99.95% chance. This isn't stage 4 cancer. The way they're talking about this thing, they're like, the good news is there's a better chance you'll survive. At 99.9%, that's not even a discussion. Like, doc, what are my chances? Only 99.95%. Oh, can I just go home then? Yes, you can.
Yeah, let me double up on the masks then. I'm not a big fan of the overreaching government shit with the COVID stuff. Like, I get wearing a mask in the store, but then when they start shutting shit down, and these women don't seem to care. And I have a clip here that she actually mentions. Let me see if I can find it. You must have a very good system that doesn't include shuffling through papers to
this
is
true.
There,
yes, I do write down my notes, and then I name my clips with words that will remind me of what is in the clip.
Oh, right. Yeah. Instead of clip 10, which is
that's amazing.
There you go.
I've been at this a long time though, Brian. So don't feel bad, you know?
Yeah. Clip 10, I think, says a lot.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if, definitely leadership, but any of us have done a good job of saying, especially those of us who are protected economically.
Oh, yes.
No, that says a lot right there.
Right.
That's why she's okay with the shutdown, because when the shutdowns happen, it doesn't affect her.
Right. And it's funny, too, because she explains what will kill everybody.
Indoor dining is spreading this virus and causing people to die. It's causing really huge problems in our economy.
Bullshit!
I think this woman might be an alarmist. If Gavin Newsom isn't all that worried about indoor dining, I don't know that we should be either.
And I mean, the indoor dining, I don't know how it is where you are, but for us, it's 25%. And they have this weird thing where in order to enter the restaurant, you have to be wearing a mask. Mm-hmm. Now you walk 6 feet to your table, take the mask off.
Right.
I'm not sure who's coming up with these ideas or these directives, but it just seems weird to me.
Yeah, you think maybe it's a little bit arbitrary in the way they're coming up with these rules? We have this new rule. We're in New York State, and the restaurants have to close by 10 p.m. And what's great about this is that it forces people to go to the restaurant earlier and all be there at the same time. You would think if you were worried about a population all being in the same place at the same time, everything would be open 24/7. Supermarkets should be open all night long. Restaurants should be open all night long. Instead, they're like, we're going to make a finite window when you can go out to eat just to make sure there's a line out the door. Okay.
This is where you can really see the intellect of politicians and how politics work.
Yes.
Like that would be interesting to talk about, just how fucked up they are with this kind of stuff, rather than the same regurgitated woke stuff. And one of these people says that they're a conservative. Beth claims that she's a conservative.
Interesting.
I didn't see any.
They agreed on every point that they made. I don't understand.
Every single one. I said that to my wife. I was like, there's no discussion. There's no like back and forth. It seems like they write statements and then just read them. And then it's like, okay, now it's your turn.
Yeah, they never talk over each other. It's almost scripted, but you can tell it's not because they can't find the word so often. Maybe they're having a hard time reading it. Chris, you found out, producer Chris, you were looking at their website. What was the tagline they had on there? Something about disagreement? You just had it up a second ago.
Oh, disagree with grace or something.
Disagree with grace? There's no disagreement going on.
It's the BFF
So I think that
show.
should be, I think you should co-op that for WATP's new slogan. Disagree with grace.
Yes.
Your podcast sucks balls. I disagree.
That's very graceful. Well, let's get back into the fear porn that's going on that these women are buying into. Shit like this.
The danger of rural areas having to deal with surges in COVID cases. They have to airlift patients to hospitals better equipped to manage severe cases.
So I looked this up because that sounds really scary. We're airlifting patients to hospitals. There was one patient who was airlifted out of El Paso, which is not necessarily a rural area. And then there was another one in Martha's Vineyard who was airlifted to Boston because Martha's Vineyard's a fucking island. That's why you had to airlift them. It's not like we're fucking flying people all across the country because they have COVID. It's just not true. But Bryan, I can assure you that it's much more dangerous now.
So in many ways, this is a very different situation than March and a more dangerous one.
And that's the way the news goes.
How is it more dangerous? They just went through and said the treatments are better. People are surviving. Why is it? Did they explain why it's more dangerous now or they just want it to be?
Dude, they don't explain anything. If you go to my clip 3, just listen to what she says, and then they just don't address it at all.
There is this current in the discussion comparing this moment to March. And I think that's an inaccurate comparison in ways that are both good and scary. On the good side, we've learned that ventilators aren't as effective as we thought they were.
On the good side.
Okay.
The good news is we were hooking all these people up to ventilators and they died. So that's good.
None of it was making a hell of a bit of difference.
She never does explain, like, why is that good? What's good about that? It would have been better if we never thought ventilators were the answer to begin with, don't you think?
Yeah.
That would have been good.
Yeah, like what asshole made that decision?
Right. And this is the same. And by the way, they're the same medical professionals who are at the hospital now that were there in March and they were hooking people up to ventilators and killing them. So I don't see a silver lining here. I could be wrong. I don't know. Let's talk about where the blame should go, Bryan. This is always one of my favorite things with podcasters. They blame everyone but themselves. In fact, blaming yourself is a bad idea. It starts with, of course, the government.
As a sociologist, it's easy for me to see how that blame is deeply misplaced. How women should be blaming our government for failing to stop the spread of the virus, for failing to pay people to stay home, for failing to provide an adequate social support system with affordable childcare, affordable health care, and sufficient financial protections for people who can't make ends meet.
Okay, so based on what she just said, at worst, these women are communists, and at best, they're children. Why can't the government just pay everybody to stand in their house for the next 20 years? What the fuck's the problem? Why aren't we just paying people to do nothing?
I thought that was crazy too, because I'm thinking like she's thinking, I think, very surface, like, okay, the host and the waiters and waitresses. She's probably not thinking as far as the cooks or the people who do the linens or the people who deliver the food or the people who process the food. Now they don't need as much food. It's like, it's not as simple as telling a couple waitresses to take a load off and hang out.
Right. And not for nothing, I don't know why no one's realized this, but in the countries that did have that huge shutdown, lockdown, like Italy, it's come back anyway. So it was all for naught. It was all a waste of fucking time, wasn't it? So when I hear people say things, they don't understand economics at all. And they say things like, oh, let's just pay people to sit at home. The government should have done this and it's all Trump's fault. I just think, okay, they must be, this is what children think when they get out of like high school. That's what they're taught. And then I'm listening to the ads that are on this show, and I realize I'm right. They are children.
The party has
Candy Crush.
started, and your invite is still waiting. I'm talking about the Candy Crush Candy Party, of course. Don't miss the 3 weeks of candy celebrations with Candy Crush Saga. There are loads of fun challenges and some sweet, sweet rewards if you top the leaderboards, like unlimited lives.
I'm sorry, I had to play too much of that. The copy of that ad is insane to me. Wow, you get unlimited lives? It's a video game. They should let you play it as much as you want, right? Isn't that how video games work?
Isn't that the game Opie used to play?
Yes.
Yes, right.
That's a commercial for children and Opie. I love that when you listen to podcasts, sometimes you wonder, who is the audience for the show? And the way that you learn is through the advertising. Like, we do ads for Manscaped because 88% of the people who listen to WATP are men. So it makes sense. So I wonder, who is listening to these two women depress the hell out of you?
Imagine if you could shop the shelves of all your local liquor stores at the same time. Well, spoiler alert, you can with Drizzly, the #1 alcohol delivery app.
By the way, Drizzly, if you're listening, we actually have a lot of alcoholics listen to the show too. We'd love to have you on. Be happy to read that copy. So they're immature drunks who enjoy this show and pay these women money. I think that pretty much sums it up.
I think they were into the Drizzly because there are two different moments in this where I feel that they show themselves as women. Clip 8, my clip 8.
Show themselves as women.
Yeah.
I had a really hard weekend. I just feel sad and I feel overwhelmed. And I just had to let myself feel that and say, like, well, that's an appropriate emotion for right now.
Yeah, they turn it on and off, don't they? They get really weepy from time to time.
Yeah, because right then she, the other one, Beth, immediately just starts reading as if her friend wasn't breaking down. She starts reading reading something else.
Well, she came to the rescue then, I guess. Or maybe.
And then if you want to quickly do clip 21 too.
Oh yeah.
You can hear her breakdown. It's fun.
That I care as much about my children's driving and succeeding and the school board doing well as you do.
Oh my God. This has to be an act, right?
They, like you said, they turn it on and off so quickly that I think they're trying to appeal to, their audience has to be, if I can't imagine a guy listening to this shit.
Well, guys are listening because when they list all of the executive producers at the end of the show, there is a long list of people and there were guys' names in there. And I was like, what? What are you doing? Why are you doing this to yourself?
What are you doing this for?
Brian, you will be shocked to learn what news channel these women go to for election results coverage.
I like to watch election returns on MSNBC.
Really? MSNBC. No. You don't say. I never would have guessed it.
Not Fox.
Getting back to fun COVID talk.
More people are going to die.
Bad news. All people are going to die. More people are going to die. All people die. I know it does suck. I don't want to bring out an existential crisis for this woman, but Christ. All right. Who else should we blame, Brian, besides the government for not paying us to stay home? Well, we got to blame the men, right? The patriarchy. Mm-hmm.
How women should, in many cases, be blaming their own spouses or partners for prioritizing their own careers, for not doing enough at home, and for denying the science about COVID-19.
That's spoken like a stay-at-home sociologist.
Yeah, no shit. Do we know what the sex of the bat in Wuhan was? Was it a dude? Because this whole thing, we don't know.
Spiteful male bat.
It's really just the men's fault all the way around. Last thing I want to play about whose fault it is. Guess what? It's Trump's fault, too.
We are all struggling individually because we are all struggling collectively, and we are struggling collectively because the type of leadership we need from the federal government isn't there right now.
Oh, okay. So that's why I'm struggling as an individual because of Trump. How does that make any sense? Can you take any responsibility for your own actions as an individual? Apparently not.
She cannot. They will not.
What else you want to talk about here, Brian? I feel like
what else have I got here? Let's see. I thought this was fun too. She out of nowhere they start talking about, this is also Trump's fault, my clip 13.
Okay.
And I will talk more about this on tonight's Nightly Nuance for those of you who are there with me on Patreon. But one of our listeners is part of a team of people working hard to help Lisa Marie Montgomery, who is scheduled to be executed by the federal government on December 8th.
This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. You want to tell the story of this woman?
This woman was pretending she was going to buy a dog from this dog breeding lady.
Yeah.
Struck up a a relationship, and then said she was going to come over and buy the dog under a false name. The woman who was selling the dogs was pregnant, and this Lisa Marie Montgomery decided to cut open her stomach, cut open her womb, and take her unborn child, leaving this woman dead in the process. They did recover the child, thankfully, like less than a day later. But these guys think that even though she's been on death row for 16 years, has exhausted all her appeals, still, Trump is such an asshole to only allow October until December 8th to grant clemency. I don't care if it was October until December 8th of the year 3000. Trump is not going to grant clemency because it's a federal crime.
Well, plus, the only reason why they care about this is because it's a woman.
Oh, yeah.
They don't talk about like the death penalty is immoral or anything like that. They're just like, this is the first woman who's going to be executed by the state in 67 years, and we just can't have that. We have people working hard on protecting this woman. It's like, she murdered a pregnant woman and stole her baby out of the womb. That's fucking insane. This person should be put down.
That's one of those crimes that like everyone is like, they'll stop and watch. Like, what the fuck did she do?
Yes.
Like, it's so out there and so crazy. It's like, well, she was abused as a child. It's like, so was I. So was I. Right. I'm not cutting open ladies' wombs.
Yeah, you're out of excuses when you start cutting babies out of people. And then after they have that conversation about how this is terrible amidst COVID, how could they do this to this woman? She says this.
So we'll put in the show notes a petition that you can sign if you care about this, links to learn more about it. I will talk more on the Nightly Nuance, but I want to mention it here because this is the kind of thing that does wake me up in the middle of the night sometimes. It just makes me feel like we are so off base in our priorities in this country.
Who's off base with their priorities? She wants to protect this woman who murdered a pregnant woman and stole her baby. She's like, we just don't have our priorities straight in this country. Like, you're a lunatic.
Yeah, you're not talking about a jaywalker. You're talking, like, come on, man.
Oh,
like,
my
what
God.
would they have had to do?
I can't believe that you're going to sign a petition to keep this woman from getting executed. This is not the person that you want to use as, see, us women could do things too. Like, no, it's not the poster child for that. I don't know.
They're also not, they do jump around a lot. The whole thing was supposed to be about the Electoral College, which I'm pretty sure they don't get going on until like minute 40.
Yeah.
So for some reason they're, even though they've been saying that the singular focus should be on COVID, clip 14, they start talking about this stuff.
We also get some new research. This mission is crewed by a couple of physicists. They're going to be looking at the effects of microgravity on the heart, for example. They're going to attempt to grow some radishes.
Space radishes made me laugh. That's all I could think of. I'm like, that's why I want to put that clip in. Space radishes.
Space radishes.
That's a priority. Space radishes.
Well, she doesn't even know what she's talking about. She just read an article and is regurgitating this information. Like,
definitely. She was talking NASA.
Why is this important? I don't understand.
Yeah. Oh, I also have, for you and I think, and all the good podcasters around us, can you play clip 4?
Yeah.
And shout out to the medical community that is already so burned out and exhausted and tired.
First, I like
yeah.
But secondly, people have been blowing healthcare workers since this whole thing started. Now, hear me out on this.
Yeah, I'm with
That's their job.
Correct.
If you're going to talk about anyone who brought light to people's lives during a fucking lockdown, like you said, 95.95% of people either don't get it or get better from it.
Yeah.
What about the podcasters who kept all that entertainment flowing?
That's a good point, man.
Like, think about, like, I mean, we were doing shit, like I was doing shit like 2-3 extra shows a week just for people, you know, and I know that's not curing anyone, but at the same time, it's like, how about a little shout out for us?
Nobody's ever thanking the podcasters. Always the fucking healthcare workers. Like, that's what they signed up for.
Yeah.
They wanted to do that so badly. They went to school for a while in order to do that.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, we don't have the right masks. It's like, well, whose fault is it? Well, men's, I guess, right? I mean, somehow.
We don't have the right mask. Oh, boy. Man, we got a lot of hate in our reviews. Apparently, people found out about Reply Guys, that podcast that we did with Gino. And I have a feeling we're going to get a lot more hate from this podcast.
Gino was awesome.
Gino was great. He was so funny on here, although everyone tells me that that's not correct. That's what I gave you.
This is another no shit Sherlock comment, clip 5.
Okay.
to me, that's what's so scary is now what we've realized is it's not ventilators that will save people. It's healthcare workers.
It was always
the ventilators
that
don't work.
It was always healthcare workers. Wow.
Holy shit. We thought it was the ventilators.
We always just thought it was this contraption that.
Yeah, they're going to become self-aware like Skynet or some shit and take care of the whole problem.
Wow.
It's unreal.
All right, I have a clip on here that I'm going to ask you, Brian. Listen closely and tell me, what the fuck is this woman talking about?
That individualistic approach is not only harming the people that blame themselves, but harming all of us because it really props up those psychological weaknesses in our own reasoning, right?
I love when you end a sentence with the word right, because you just made no sense.
That's true. Yeah, she's like, right, you know what I'm saying? It's like, no.
There was a lot of this stuff where they were just talking in circles and not making any points for minutes at a time. And she went through the Electoral College, and I thought that they had some good research and information on it. It wasn't all blowhardy. But then when they're trying to figure out what the solutions are to these problems, they have no idea, and they just talk in these ways that cannot be understood by anybody. But I think that they think they sound smart. And someone must think they sound smart because they're fucking signing up. That nightly nuance thing that she was promoting on the Patreon, I don't know if you realize this. For $5 a month, you get the Thursday night nightly nuance. But for $10 a month, you get Monday through Thursday. So she's doing nightly shows 4 days a week.
Oh my God.
How does she have this much content to put out? She can't even
how do
find the
people
right
wanna
word to
watch
say. That's the crazy part. They also have another podcast called The Nuanced Life, which is a whole other show that both of them co-host. Would you ever do that? Like have two co-hosts who do multiple different types of shows?
I don't think so.
It doesn't make any sense.
I don't think so. I don't understand. Like, they're so, look, this, and I feel like I'm being objective about this. They're so dry and boring.
Yeah.
Like, they're just so boring that I'm like, how do they have, like I said, 2,400 patrons, like, with so much content out there?
Well, when they say dynamite stuff like this, now this is referring again to the Electoral College, and I did not realize this.
I say this as a Southerner. The history of the South and Electoral College is so disturbing. It was about protecting white supremacy and protecting power, and it still is.
Did you know that, Brian? The Electoral College is all about white supremacy?
I wasn't aware.
I had no idea. I never read that history book.
What is it about liberals that they just love to ascribe anything that they don't like to racism or the patriarchy or misogyny or any number of these E's, or isms?
Yeah,
I don't understand.
They're able to connect dots that are very far apart from each other, and they can just connect right to it. Just go, yeah, well, it's because of white supremacy. You're like, whoa, can you back up and explain? She didn't explain that. Can you explain what you mean by that? It doesn't make any fucking sense.
They don't explain anything. I had a clip on there, clip 16.
And we had an administration. It didn't function well, but it functioned.
Right, talking about the Trump administration.
Yeah, well, what do you mean by that? She doesn't follow it up. So she's saying it functioned on a base level. It was functional, but I'm like, well, why didn't it function then?
Right.
Like, wasn't the economy great? Like, didn't COVID bring everything down, kind of?
Yeah, I know. It's so funny because the people who just throw out there like, well, Trump was the worst president ever, and everyone just accepts that, like, well, yeah, of course, we all know that. That's just the truth. But no one ever explains why.
Yeah, and I'm not even the only thing I cared about in my state. The only thing I voted for was yes on marijuana. And we won, baby. We won.
Congratulations. We're still waiting in New York State. That was supposed to have happened earlier this year. I blame COVID. Now I'm blaming shit.
It's Trump's fault.
It probably is Trump's fault.
I have a clip 22 where Beth admits she's a dummy.
Oh, good. I always like that.
I have a bias that decisions made on a small scale are usually higher quality decisions than decisions made at a large scale. And that is a bias that is often proven wrong for me.
I have this deep belief that I'm always wrong about. We'll change it then. Why would you say that?
Killed me.
Oh, boy. That's fun.
I think this actually does also sum up sum up both of these ladies. You know, they're talking about what they're doing, you know, like that isn't politically related. And one lady takes pictures, but Beth reads a book. That's my clip 23.
Over the weekend, I read Girls Burn Brighter, which was a selection for our Extra Credit Book Club.
Oh, okay. That's fun. I bet she has a hobby.
I don't know
She's
what
reading.
the Extra Credit Book Club is.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But if you follow it quickly with clip 24.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's great that she's reading a book. I'm sure that's a lot of fun for her to unwind. Sure. You know, she's watching all this news coverage. She's getting very scared about COVID and the transition to the Biden administration. Hopefully, this is going to soothe her.
It is mostly set in India, and it is a hard read in that there's incredible suffering. You come to very much care about two main characters, and they go through incredible suffering.
Who's reading this book? What kind of endorsement is that? I wept openly as I turned each page. Like, okay, great.
I swear I'm not even kidding. When she said Girls Burn Brighter and I looked up the book, and it was in India, I'm like, there's no way they're not talking about literally burning women alive, like in kitchen accidents and shit, you know?
Oh, man. And you get invested in these characters who just get tortured. Oh, great.
Yeah, they want to be sad all the time.
And they are. And they're pulling it off. They're nailing it. They're not well. And I just feel like they're too involved.
Because we are the United States. And our destinies are tied up together. And I think the Electoral College perpetuates this idea that we're not striving together to a better future, but that we are competing with each other for scarce resources and scarce political power.
I think she should stop watching cable news for a while. Like, just take a week or two off. Because it's not working for her.
Who are the people that just buy news wholesale, regardless of what channel it's on, regardless of the source?
Dude, that's the crazy thing to me, because they keep citing, they're like, well, according to the Washington Post and according to the New York Times, I'm like, do you believe what you read in the Washington Post? And there's still people like that? That's amazing. It's propaganda,
it's
idiot.
Proven. It's been proven.
It's proven propaganda. What are you doing? What I thought was fun is she tries to, and what they try to do is they try to toe the line from time to time, although anytime they spout one of their opinions, they prove to be communist, but they try to toe the line and just say, you know, we have different opinions, but it doesn't make one person dumb or another person smart. And she says this about, they're talking about the Senate race in Alabama, and she was disappointed in the result, but then she thought about it.
And it's easy to get in that spot and be like, ugh, right? The dumb people of Alabama. But then that's not fair. That's not reasonable.
So she doesn't want to paint with a broad brush, which I appreciate. So I thought what she was going to say next was, well, maybe they voted in this Republican because they have these values or they want to see these types of changes in their state. But no, this is what she actually meant by people in Alabama aren't dumb.
I read an amazing statistic about the Electoral College that 800,000 Democrats voted in Alabama. That's equal to the population of about 9 electoral votes in other smaller states. So even Alabama, the state that is so easy to have a narrative about as a Democrat, is just not true. It's just not true.
So isn't that funny? She goes, not everyone in Alabama's an idiot. There's also Democrats there. Like, oh, that's where you were going with that? Okay.
She's so enlightened.
Yeah, so enlightened. I really appreciate that insight. Great. Is really one of these people a conservative for real?
Yeah, the Beth claims she's a conservative and Sarah's a progressive.
I'm not buying it. I couldn't tell the two apart when they were talking, except for the stupid cadence thing. Oh, and the longest inhale I've ever heard on a podcast.
I think that's essential. But it's like...
I didn't sweeten that.
I have a clip of Sarah delivering a double whammy of vocal fry and another great staccato pause delivery of a word.
Love it. Is it 20?
It's 20, yeah.
Yeah.
The reason we ended up with the Electoral College is because the oligarchy of the South that wanted to protect its power has been successful at protecting that power for most of our countries.
I don't. Why do women do it? Like, what is it about?
So I've actually looked into this, and I've heard it explained on the No Agenda show that for some reason, younger women think they sound smarter when they talk with that vocal fry.
Really? It's that simple?
Well, apparently. I don't know if that's true or not, but they do not sound smart.
Read it in the Washington Post.
Probably the Washington Post told me that. It's crazy that so many people talk like that because they're doing it on purpose. You're not born talking like that. That's a weird thing to do.
No. And the whole like pause oligarchy. I'm like, oh, that's a 10-cent word, isn't it, baby?
Oh, she was really proud of herself there.
Yeah, they have a vocal fry party in clip 18.
Okay.
You hear a lot of it.
The fry party, I like it.
But how can we feel like more voices are heard through a different or reformed system?
You know, we talk about values so often here, and we say that values should drive our priorities.
It starts normal, then it descends to this.
I know, even just the word priority started normal. Prioritize. If there's enough syllables in there, they can transition into a frog. It's very impressive. All right, so at the end, we get to know Sarah and Beth a little bit. They tell us a little bit about their personal lives and all the fun stuff they're doing. And what Sarah does is she's been journaling everything that happens throughout an entire week.
I also really value the fact that I can go back and see that, oh yeah, when Griffin was a baby, Nicholas would bring his bottle in at 6 a.m. and he'd sleep with me for another hour.
Who gives a shit? Who gives a fuck?
When she was talking about taking pictures of everything that's happening throughout the day for an entire week and writing down notes about it, how self-important is this fucking person to think that anyone's going to want to see this ever again? Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, if they even want to see it the first time.
Right. Like, your life is not that exciting. You don't need to make record of it for future generations.
No, definitely not. She, I had a different clip if I can find it. It's, maybe I won't find it. But she's really into her kids and thinks that we should also be into her kids as well. Like, that should be our top priority. If they're talking priorities, hey, my kids.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know them, but just read about them.
That was one of the things when they were talking about, my kids got to go to school. It's really important that they go to school. So all of you people who work in restaurants who are killing everyone, just stay home. You got to save my kids. So you have to stay home. It's like, lady, these people also love the people who they're in their families and their friends and would also like to have a life. It's not just about you.
Yeah, it does. They really are sort of myopic and narcissistic.
A little bit,
they come off like they're these do-gooders for the whole liberal cause, but really they're just shitheels.
That's a good way of summing it up. I would agree with that. This is how they wrap up the show. I just thought this was interesting.
We hope that you are finding bits of enjoyment in a tough time. We hope this episode helped you process some of that tough time and think maybe a little bit differently about some of what's going on in our country. We'll be back here again with you on Friday to continue the political conversation.
Hope we're finding bits of enjoyment. All you did was scare the shit out of me about COVID and then tell me how the Electoral College is all about white supremacy. What kind of enjoyment? What sicko is getting enjoyment from that?
Oh, God forbid if I live in Alabama, how am I going to enjoy it?
It's terrifying. I'm a Republican. Everything they talked about was terrifying. The one woman was saying how she wasn't getting as much sleep lately. She has to take CBD. I think that was one of their ad reads. It's like, well, yeah, of course you're not getting as much sleep. You're terrifying yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, they're sitting around just thinking about this shit all the time. Now, people ask me, they're like, well, how did the lockdown affect you? It's like, it didn't really, because I work from home mostly. I don't like to go out because I don't really like where I live, it's sort of crowded. It's not a city, but it's crowded enough. I just, I don't really like being around people that much. I just don't.
Yeah.
So staying home and shit and being able to just order in and not have to deal with people and the streets were like not busy, it was kind of awesome in a way.
Well, I'm glad for you, Brian. Is that the bit of enjoyment and entertainment you wanted to share with everyone?
That was probably the bit of enjoyment for everyone out there, yeah.
At least
I was the
Brian's
0.5.
Us musicians who can't play shows anymore, don't worry about us. At least Brian's having a good time. He likes to sit at home.
Yeah, I'm kicking home. Hey, if you put it on Zoom, like everybody's doing their Zoom shit these days, I'll watch you rock out.
All right.
Lots of isotopes.
All right, there you go. There's the plug I was looking for. ISO that. Oh, this is a fun clip that I have. This might sum up the content of this show. When you think about what value are these people bringing when they're talking, what are they trying to communicate? What are they trying to convey with what they're saying? This sums it up perfectly.
We have to call a thing, as Brenda Salter McNeil said during the Ally tour, and I think about a lot. We have to call a thing.
that literally means nothing. That is such a waste of time. We have to call a thing a thing. These are the types of sentences that idiots regurgitate because they hear someone else say it and they think it sounds smart. It doesn't. It's not a smart thing to say. Calling a thing is not a smart sentence.
It's not deep. No, it's
deep.
meaningless.
Oh, boy. What else do you have on here, Brian? Anything else you want to play from the show?
Let's see.
It was an hour and 9 minutes long. I made you suffer through it, so I want to make sure I got all your clips in. It's
like
so
at least
boring.
social distance assistance, like it was just the one that we did last time.
Yeah.
They were very easy to make fun of. These ladies were just boring as hell, man.
Yeah. I remember that.
But still fun to do.
Remember we listened to that show and this happened?
This episode could be hard to listen to.
I still have that on the board. It's so funny. It really summed up the show for me.
I did think this was another no shit moment. Clip 17.
Okay.
I don't know. I am coming around to the viewpoint that some people are never going to respect the outcome of this election. And I think that's what you see in the Biden team right now. I don't hear them talking about the election wasn't stolen, shut down all of the dissent.
Because they won, you stupid fuck.
Right.
Why would there be dissent?
Well, yeah, she's trying to make the point that Trump's out there saying, I didn't lose the election, and he's trying to sue and have recounts and all this kind of stuff. And they're saying, look at how Biden's handling it. He's not even talking about it. Yeah, because the media's not talking about it either. Why would Biden bring any... Nobody wants to say anything. Nobody wants to be like, oh yeah, is there maybe a possible problem? Was there some weird shit that happened the night of the election? They don't want to bring it up. Why would they?
Yeah, like, do you want to like quadruple check your lottery ticket with a guy if he already told you won? No.
Right,
You're just
yes,
like, cool,
we're
I'm
good.
a winner.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so I think that's most of what I had.
All right.
Who are these podcasts? WATP.